As you know, for the past couple of weeks, we've been following the fallout of what's been going on in Kent, and it has pretty much dominated the past 2 weeks with pretty much something new, almost coming out every day since that leaked video. The denial, of course, the fact that these people were traitors to the cause, the rallying email saying, please, please, support us. Rumors still, of course, of a vote of no confidence potentially against Linda Carmen. Will it go through? Who knows? Of course, that's the big question. But if it does get brought up, it will be very interesting if it does happen that way. Will there be any more people kicked out? Who knows? Did they actually get the leaker in the 6 people they have kicked out over this? Who knows? Like I say, they haven't got any evidence that one of the people that they've now booted out of the party are now one of these leakers. There's now at least 2 lawsuits, or at least legal actions taking place against Reform UK. One, of course, is the really weird story of the guy who is suing over his erotic novel. It's just weird every time I say it. And then, of course, you've got the other one who is suing, for, you fired me wrongly, which is something Reform UK want to get rid of by reducing workers' rights. As someone pointed out into the comments not too long ago. But good point to bring up. So there is a lot of stuff still going on in there. However, in the background of all of this, while all this has been going on, you may very well know, if you've been following, if you are new, well, then hit the subscribe button. But if you may not have seen, but at least not as prominent, of course, has been the downfall in Cornwall. Because, oh my word, if you could compare, the Shakespearean tragedies to what's going on, if, maybe, Hamlet is what's going on in Kent, but truly Macbeth is what is going on in Cornwall. We have had betrayals, backstabbings, pub shouting matches, shockingly not involving Anne Widdecombe, who also happened to be there at the time. And quite frankly, I am surprised. She strikes me as someone who would be well up for a good shouting match in a pub. But as always, we're going to go over this full sorry tale of what has been going on down in Cornwall as we've been following it, because it is something that should, I think, be brought to light more. But I think one of the reasons why it hasn't been, because they're not in power. I think that's the bigger reason why. So, as always, before we do kick off with things today, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page, the one of today's link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button. And of course, as always, there are the YouTube membership down below as well. QR code up here. Let me get it right. We'll take you, of course, straight to the Patreon page as well. So let's crack on then into this. So, when reality bites, the rapid rise and chaotic fall of Reform UK in Cornwall. So, I know whenever I come back here next, Nigel Farage told a jubilant crowd of hundreds in a leisure centre in Redruth that Reform UK will become a dominant force, not just in Cornwall politics, but in British politics. Well, certainly not in Cornwall politics, if you know what's been following what's been going on here. So this was, of course, back in February when the local elections arrived. Just 3 months later, it appeared that Farage's prophecy was at least in part coming true. Reform took 28 of Cornwall's council seats, the highest number of any party. But during his speech at Carbreen Leisure Centre, Farage also warned his rapturous supporters that they have to now convert theory into reality. And reality in Cornwall is now biting. Oh boy, is it. Oh boy, is it. So, 6 months on from the local elections, after which Reform UK was unable to form an administration, leaving the Liberal Democrats and Independents now to set up a ruling coalition, the party's presence in the county is now in disarray, following weeks of resignations, suspensions, and infighting that mean Reform UK no longer holds the largest number of seats in the authority. Bear in mind, why were they not able to form an administration? It was because they spent the entire election calling every other councillor, every one of their potential oppositions, or at least who might have formed administration with them, corrupt, wasteful, and absolutely awful, terrible people. So when it came to saying, okay, guys, who wants to work with us? They basically all turn around and going, yeah, we ain't working with you after that election campaign. And it wasn't just here in Cornwall where this happened as well. There are a number of other places where they got a big number of seats, maybe could have formed a coalition administration, maybe with the Conservatives, maybe with Independents, but they didn't because they spent an entire election campaign just trashing every other party out there. Who's going to work with them at that point? No one. And we'll see if that still continues in next May's election as well. So back to this. Critics say that along now with the chaos in the Reform-led council now in Kent, the farcical scenes in Cornwall, where Reform act now as the official opposition, are now just further evidence that the party is just not capable of delivering beyond a protest vote. Two key figures now involved in the fiasco, the former leader and deputy leader of the Reform group in Cornwall, say that interference from the national figures in the party was of course, behind their decision to stand down, and could also now be to blame for some of the infighting that has brought now Reform into disrepute. So that control, that London office, once again, being a prime suspect of what's been going on. Do as we tell you, not what you want to do. Essentially, seems to be the message emanating from that office in London. But anyway, so it continues. Roland O'Connor, a seasoned party figure who won 16.5% of the vote in North Cornwall at last year's general election, was now the first to stand down in early October, not only stepping down as deputy, but also from Reform itself. He said, I made a commitment to serve the people from my division as local councillor, to represent their best interests on anything to do with the council services, buses, transports, roads, hedges, potholes, bins, all the things that one would expect for a councillor to be involved in, said O'Connor, who represent the St. Columba and St. Clum Major and St. Margan and St. Wen division. True, is what local councils tend to do. But of course, as you may remember, along comes the national organisation, said, yeah, we want you to talk more about this. It's like, we don't have anything to do with that as councillors. It's not our job to do that. But anyway, he continued. But the position I found myself in as deputy leader and also now as Reform UK councillor was the national agenda. Right was now being emphasised. O'Connor said that the two key propositions from Reform UK on the national level were now challenging the immigration and net zero. The direct impact of immigration in Cornwall is negligible, he said. On net zero, Reform councillors are now sitting on planning committees like all councillors and are required to be apolitical in their decision making, he added. So we have the very, very odd occasion of someone who's like, yeah, we've got to be apolitical here. We can't bring our feelings against, a solar farm or things like that and just say, no, we can't, because that's what the National Party is telling us to do, which, again, very interesting admission here, because now we know that any other Reform councillor potentially sitting on any planning committee who might go up against a solar farm, wind farm, etc., you name it, anything that is like good net zero wise, maybe not doesn't even have to be like a solar farm itself, could be maybe even a building with solar panels on it, and they'll be against it. So there's a lot of stuff here that they are damaging just because they are being told by the National Office, you must oppose immigration and net zero at all costs. So back to this. He said, of course, there was an ongoing divergence between what time I was able to dedicate to the serving the residents of my decision versus trying to unravel the push-pull between national and local. 2 days later, of course, Reform's leader then in Cornwall, Rob Parsonage, then also resigned from the role from the party. Parsonage, who represents Torpoint, said that leader he would receive instructions over WhatsApp from the head office, ordering them to put in motions to scrap all the net zero target related matters. Once again, this WhatsApp from head office, it's that unit in London, once again cropping up every single time. They deny that they are like controlling these councillors with like an iron grip. Every councillor that leaves or something that happens, even reformed councillors who are still loyal, still talk about this, or at least let it slip that that unit exists and is telling them what to do. So it's kind of odd that they're still denying that this exists. So back to this. So he continued saying the trouble with this was that you now have to go in there with an open mind and with a view to assessing a planning application based on its merits, the regulations, and then the law, Parsonage added. So effectively, you are now being asked to do something that you're not allowed to do. O'Connor and Parsonage have now formed the Cornish Independent Non-Aligned Group, and 2 other Reform UK councillors have also joined. So, yeah, they're now the Cornish Independent Non-Aligned Group, not to be confused with the other Cornish independents. Love it. Anyway, Parsonage's wife, Christine Parsonage, who was also elected as Reform UK councillor, stood down, of course, at the end of last month on health grounds. Her short time as a councillor, however, was, of course, mired in controversy after it emerged that she lived more than 40 miles away from a division in Torpoint. She was heavily criticised by, of course, members of Newquay Town Council in August for not even attending their meetings as the Cornwall representative for the area that she represented. She later admitted standing as a paper candidate and a contender who does not realistically expected to be elected. So this is also a very telling admission that Reform are just putting anyone they can, telling them, oh, don't worry, you won't be elected. So, shock horror, part of the reason why we've seen so much chaos is that people who've been elected were not expecting to win, not expecting to be elected. So they had no idea. That's why we saw so many people leave in the first couple of weeks. It's why we still have, recently in Worcestershire. Oh my God, this council meeting's going on for 8 hours. What am I going to do? An 8-hour council meeting is something that happens from time to time. It is not unusual for that to happen. But here they are complaining about the length of meetings, partly because of the number of stuff that they have not done, committee meetings, votes, etc., that need to be discussed in these meetings. So guess what? They don't get to be discussed. So guess what? Your meeting now balloons in time. Anyway, then 5 other departures now from Reform do mean that it now has 23 seats on the Cornwall Council, previously having held 28, compared to the Liberal Democrats now holding 26. Before the departure, Rob Parson and O'Connor, the former had come under criticism from within his own party. Curtis Bellows, the then chair of the Reform Cornwall South East branch, did not hold back with his criticism on Parsonage online, calling him an odious little man. And this, of course, is now leading into the pub fight scene. Well, not the pub fight, the pub shouting match, shall we say. Saying he's got no leadership qualities whatsoever, Mello says. He tries to make out that he's got all this experience in politics. Well, he proved he hasn't. I told the head office guy he shouldn't be there, and he's going to be a disaster. And you've seen what's unfolded now in the Southwest. In another twist, Mellows himself is now suspended from the party after making allegedly offensive comments about Prince Harry in social media posts. That's new. Well, with these Reform UK people. Mellows, of course, said that he had made a formal bullying complaint about the members of the party in the county, which, of course, were not dealt with by the regional or even national figures. He said, I would not let the bullying drop. I kept on and on about it, he said. They've obviously decided to get rid of me, which is fine. Weird. Honestly, that's a weird twist I was not expecting, in this story, to be honest, but there you go. Anyway, despite now, of course, the election of the new leader and deputy leader of the reform group, the infighting now continues. What a surprise. Only this week, the chair of Carbon, Redruth and Highlift branch was then removed, much to dismay of the branch members. The waters are even muddied further by the fact that the chair who was removed from the branch against its members' wishes, is and remains the newly appointed deputy of the party in Cornwall, Roger Tant. So that's even more weird. You've gotten rid of someone who was the chair of the local branch, but is now the deputy leader of the party in Cornwall. That's weird. That is really weird that that has been done. Members of the branch have, of course, now been anonymously briefing the local press of now the removing of our popular and successful previous chairman and now parachuting in a complete unknown. Yeah, I wonder why. So, as reform now continues to unravel, how are the other parties in power responding? Leah Frost, the Liberal Democrat leader in the Cornwall Council, said, "It is quite astonishing in reality. Everyone knew that this would eventually come. It is of no surprise. We had a lot of reform paper candidates in the local elections in May. A lot of those people got elected on the wave. And now they are realizing what it's like to be a councillor and what it means to be a councillor. Ultimately, some of them are now realizing that, of course, it is very difficult and don't want to actually do it. And that's entirely up to them. Others, of course, are realizing that there's a lot more to it and they want to do a good job for their communities, which is, of course, great. And sort of realize that reform isn't the answer to that. Again, wouldn't be too surprised if we saw this as well. Because there are people, and again, we've seen them. I've even encountered them. I've seen people who are really want to do good for the local communities, but somehow believe reform's the answer to them, to like solving all these problems. It's not. It's really, really not. I mean, this is just a perfect example because they're going to be told, they're going to be dictated to by, of course, that unit down in London, which if they're unexperienced, they might just go along with and just start, nodding their heads. Yes, yes, head office. Yes, we'll do that. Yes, we'll do that. Of course we will. So it continues on in a very, very clear disaster pattern that is unfolded across many different ways across all these councils. And it is very likely in May, they will probably take more. As I've said before, I do worry they will probably take my council as well. Up in the north, up here, a lot of councils are basically doing all out elections because we've had boundary changes. So that means every single seat is up for grabs. That is a full 62 seats in Barnsley. Will they win all 62 seats? God, I hope not. But it is very likely they will be probably the largest group on the council. But then I will get to bring you the news of what's going on in our town councils. I may even end up going to one of these town councils just to watch the fun unfold and then do a live stream, like walking back from the town council, telling you what on earth happened. It doesn't fill me with joy, honestly, having to do that. But it's I probably will have to do to tell you, yeah, these idiots are at it again. So expect a lot of news probably in the future. Hopefully not, fingers crossed, from my own town, unfortunately. And again, will not be too surprised if there's a lot of towns up north end up going reform because they foolishly believe that reform UK is the answer. Well, when they get in power, we'll see. So back to this. So others, So, of course, the Reform UK spokesman said that these claims are, of course, untrue. Reform UK councillors have complete autonomy to take a stand on local issues and are encouraged to come up with solutions to improve their communities. However, why? We know that's not true. We know that's not true because you've had the guy who's in charge of that unit speak at the local government association like 4 months ago now, I think it was, and he pretty much confirmed that was true. Other councillors have come out who are still Reform councillors, still members of the party, saying they're being told what to do by that reform unit. So that is an absolute bold-faced lie to say that Reform UK are allowing them autonomy on this. They are not allowed any autonomy on this. So back to this. However, they continue, voters do say that they have a right to expect their elected Reform UK representatives to remember the platform that they were elected on, which includes opposing now the net zero agenda and ensuring that taxpayer funds are spent on local people, not illegal immigrants. Newly appointed, of course, Reform leader in Cornwall, Paul Ashton, also rejected these comments. The local councillors now had to focus on national reform policies, such as immigration and net zero, rather than, of course, prioritising important issues affecting the Cornish voters, such as affordable housing and public services. Again, we know this isn't true, because what did Richard Tice go do recently and upset the complete apple cart in Lancashire? He went and said, yeah, we're gonna go, fracking crazy on this place. We're gonna get, bring out the fracking units. We're gonna get all that shale gas out of here like crazy. That is what they're gonna do again. And that, bear in mind, even the local Conservatives at the time were like, whoa, this is losing us votes. Like, what are you doing? Slow down here, And guess what? They lost. They got out of power. They lost a lot of seats because of that. And now the Reform Council there continuously is juggling back and forth, being like, well, we might be pro-fracking, we might not be pro-fracking. We just can't know. We just don't know. So we're just going to basically just say, yes, we are, and no, we're not when people ask. It's a weird situation there. Anyway, he also said that there was no now directive from Farage or any other senior reform figure that members had to toe the national line. Again, that is false, because why does that unit down in London exist in the first place? And we know it exists because we've seen messages. We've heard the guy exists that runs it talk about it. We've heard this time and time again, not only just from here, but from other Reform UK councillors, ex-Reform UK councillors, current Reform UK councillors. We know it exists. So trying to say that it doesn't exist, there's no one, again, as they say here, there's no one breathing down their necks, is complete and absolutely false. They know it exists. They know it's a thing. They know why it's the guy who ran from there, did a runner from it because of it. Why are they still trying to deny that it doesn't exist? So there you go. That's the Cornwall chaos in a very fine little nutshell. Even though it's now a 23-minute video. I know I do long videos, but you either like them or you don't. That is, of course, as always. Let me know what you think about all this. If you are from Cornwall, of course, let me know what you think about all this, because quite frankly, you have dodged a bullet. Because imagine if these guys were in power. If it is this bad as we've seen going on in Cornwall, where their fire and rescue service board cannot operate, imagine what it would be like in Cornwall where this has happened. Like, they might not have be even in power anymore. And who would have gone into coalition with them? Conservatives? Independents? I don't think Lib Dems would have. Yeah, crazy times indeed in Cornwall. But again, it's not going to stop. I guarantee you now, it might calm down a bit, but it's not going to stop. The roller coaster in Cornwall ain't going to stop anytime soon. So as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.